first bullet shattered the glass behind Adese's head. She didn't scream, didn't duck. Her hand remained steady as she set down the porcelain teacup on the counter, the ceramic clicking softly against wood while three masked men burst through the restaurant doors, their weapons raised, their voices cutting through the dinner rush like machetes through silk. "Everybody down! Wallets, phones, jewelry, now!" Bodies hit the floor, screams erupted, tables overturned. 37 customers of the Golden Pearl restaurant scrambled like scattered pearls themselves, their faces pressed against cold tiles, their designer watches sliding off trembling wrists. But not her. Adese Okafor straightened her apron, her dark skin gleaming under the pendant lights, her braids pulled back in a crown that made her look like the Nigerian royalty her grandmother always claimed she was. She was 26 years old, standing 5'8" in flat shoes, and she had survived Lagos at midnight. She had survived the compound raids when she was 17. She had survived a 22-hour flight with $40 in her pocket and a dream stitched into her chest. She would not cower for three amateurs who couldn't even hold their guns properly. "The money is in the register," she said, her voice steady as a heartbeat. "Take it and leave. Nobody needs to get hurt tonight." The lead gunman whipped toward her, his weapon aimed at her forehead. "Did I tell you to speak?" "No, but I'm telling you the truth. 12,000 won in the register, maybe 15,000 in the safe behind the kitchen. Take it, go, before you make a mistake you can't undo." Her accent carried, that distinctive blend of Igbo rhythm and learned Korean precision that she'd spent 3 years perfecting. It floated through the chaos like a melody, calm and controlled and utterly unafraid. In the far corner of the restaurant, hidden in a private booth shrouded by bamboo screens, a man sat alone. Park Jae-won had not moved. His bodyguard, Dae-jung, had reached for his weapon the moment the doors burst open, but Jae-won's single raised finger had frozen him in place. Now, the most powerful mafia boss in Seoul sat motionless, his black suit worth more than this restaurant's yearly revenue, his face carved from granite, his eyes fixed on the woman in the server's uniform who spoke to armed men like they were children throwing tantrums. He knew that voice. He had heard it once before, 18 months ago, in the darkness of an alley behind the Gangnam night market. He had been bleeding from a knife wound in his side, crawling through garbage, his enemies closing in. A voice had emerged from the shadows, that exact voice, that exact calm, and it had said, "This way, quickly, don't make noise." A woman's hand had pulled him into a hidden doorway. She had pressed cloth against his wound. She had guided him through a labyrinth of back passages until he reached his waiting car, and when he turned to thank her, to see her face, she was already gone, vanished like smoke, dissolved like a dream he wasn't sure he'd actually had. He had searched for 18 months. 18 months of investigators, of traced leads, of dead ends. 18 months of hearing that voice in his sleep, of seeing the phantom outline of braids disappearing around corners. And now, here she was, standing in a burning restaurant, facing down death and refusing to kneel. "I said get down." The gunman stepped closer to Adese, pressing his weapon against her temple. "You think you're special? You think your African ass is bulletproof?" "I think," Adese said quietly, "that you have approximately 30 seconds before the men in that corner booth decide to intervene, and when they do, you will not survive." The gunman laughed. "Who men? Those businessmen? What are they going to do? Throw their expensive chopsticks at me?" Adese's eyes shifted, just barely, just enough to meet Jae-won's gaze through the bamboo screen. Something passed between them. Recognition. 20 seconds. The gunman's laughter died in his throat as he finally noticed what he should have noticed from the beginning. The two men in the corner booth had not gotten down. They had not screamed. They had not surrendered their watches. They were watching him like lions watching an antelope wander too far from the herd. "Who?" the gunman started. He never finished. Jaewon moved with a speed that defied his age. One moment he was seated, the next he was behind the gunman, one hand wrapped around the man's weapon, the other pressed against his throat. Daejong had already neutralized the second robber, driving his knee into the man's spine while twisting his arm until bones scraped against bones. The third robber ran. He didn't make it to the door. Jaewon's thrown knife caught him in the back of the thigh, sending him sprawling across shattered glass and overturned soup. The sound he made was barely human, a high-pitched wail of terror and pain that echoed through the restaurant like a death knell. Silence fell. Jaewon released the lead gunman, letting him crumple to the floor in a heap of shattered bravado. Then he straightened his cuffs, adjusted his tie, and walked toward the woman who had not moved through the entire exchange. "You," he said. Adeze met his gaze. "Me. You. The alley. 18 months ago, you saved my life." It wasn't a question. "I was bleeding badly. I couldn't just leave you there. Why did you run? Why didn't you wait for me to thank you?" "Because I saw your tattoo." Her eyes dropped to his wrists, where the edge of a black dragon disappeared beneath his shirt sleeve. "I know what that mark means. I know who you are, and I wanted no part of your world. And yet here you are. Here I am, still wanting no part of your world." She bent down to begin collecting the scattered napkins and broken dishes. "Thank you for handling that. The police will be here soon. You should probably leave." Jaewon stared at her. No one dismissed him. No one turned their back on Park Jaewon, head of the Black Dragon Syndicate, controller of 60% of Seoul's underground economy, the man whose name was whispered in boardrooms and back alleys alike. No one, except this woman, with dark skin and steady hands and absolutely zero fear in her eyes. "What's your name?" he asked. "Adeze." "That's not Korean." "I'm not Korean. I'm Nigerian. I'm a waitress, and I'm going to be late on my rent if I don't finish my shift. So if you'll excuse me, have dinner with me." She stopped, looked at him, actually laughed. "No. No? No." She resumed cleaning. "I don't date criminals. I don't date dangerous men, and I definitely don't date men who throw knives at people's legs like it's a casual Tuesday. It is Tuesday. That's not the point." Jaewon felt something unfamiliar twist in his chest. It took him a moment to recognize it as genuine amusement. When was the last time someone had made him almost smile? "I'm not asking for your love. I'm asking for dinner. One meal, to thank you properly for saving my life. You just saved mine. We're even." "We're not." He stepped closer and she didn't step back. He liked that. He liked it more than he should have. One dinner, in a public place. You can leave whenever you want. Why? "Because in all my years, I've never met anyone who stood in front of guns without flinching. I want to know why you're not afraid. Maybe I've seen worse things than 3 boys playing pretend." "Maybe you have." He pulled a card from his pocket, black with silver lettering, just a phone number and nothing else. "When you change your mind." "I won't." "You will." He placed the card on the counter and walked out of the restaurant, his footsteps crunching over broken glass, his presence lingering in the air like thunder after lightning. Ada stared at the card for a long moment. Then she picked it up and slipped it into her apron pocket. 3 weeks later, she called. Not because she had changed her mind, not because she wanted dinner, but because 4 men were following her home from work every night. And no matter which route she took, which subway she boarded, which alley she ducked through, they were always there, watching, waiting. "I need help," she said when he answered. "Where are you?" "Hongdae Station, East Exit." "Don't move. Don't look at them. I'll be there in 7 minutes." He was there in 5. The black Mercedes appeared like a shadow, sliding to the curb with predatory grace. The door opened, and Ada climbed in without hesitation, her heart pounding for the first time in weeks. "They're still watching," she said. "I know." Jaewon's jaw was tight. "I see them." "Who are they? What do they want?" "They work for Song Min-jun. He's the head of the Silver Serpent clan, my rival, my enemy." His voice was cold enough to freeze fire. "They must have found out about the alley, about you saving me. They think you're important to me." "I'm not." "No. But now you're in danger because of me, and that makes me your responsibility." I don't need a protector. Right now, you do. The car accelerated, weaving through Seoul's nighttime traffic with urgent precision. Ada watched the city blur past her window, watched the men in the other car try to follow, watched Jaewon's driver lose them in a maze of side streets and underground tunnels. Why is he your enemy, this Song Min-jun? Because I killed his brother. She turned to look at him. Did his brother deserve it? His brother kidnapped and murdered 12 women. He kept them in a warehouse. He did things to them that I won't describe. When I found out, I put a bullet in his skull myself. Jaewon's hands clenched on his knees. Min-jun doesn't care that his brother was a monster. He only cares that I ended his bloodline. So, this is a war. It's been a war for 7 years, but I was winning. I was close to ending it. And then you saved my life in that alley, and now he has a new weapon to use against me. Me? You. Ada was quiet for a long moment. The car pulled into an underground parking structure, descending level after level, until they reached a steel door guarded by 4 armed men. Where are we? She asked. My home, the safest place in Seoul. I'm not staying with you. Tonight you are. Tomorrow we'll discuss options, but tonight you're staying here, because if you go home, you'll be dead by morning. She wanted to argue. She wanted to maintain her independence, her distance, her carefully constructed wall between herself and this world of blood and power and violence. But she wasn't stupid, and she wasn't suicidal. Fine, one night. One night became 1 week. 1 week became 1 month. It happened gradually, the way all dangerous things happen. Slowly at first, then all at once. Adeyeze stayed in a guest suite the size of her entire apartment. She ate meals prepared by private chefs. She had bodyguards who followed her to work and back, men who blended into shadows so completely that she almost forgot they were there. And every evening, Jaewon came to her, not to pressure her, not to demand anything, just to sit with her, to talk, to listen to her stories about Lagos, about her grandmother who sold palm oil in the markets, about her father who disappeared when she was 7, and her mother who worked herself to death by the time Adeyeze was 20. He told her things too, about growing up in Busan, the son of a fisherman who got involved with the wrong people and ended up at the bottom of the harbor when Jaewon was 9, about being taken in by the Black Dragon, about clawing his way from errand boy to enforcer to second in command to leader, about the things he had done that he wasn't proud of, and the things he had done that he was. I don't pretend to be a good man, he said one night as they sat on his balcony overlooking the glittering Seoul skyline. I've killed, I've destroyed, I've built my empire on the bones of my enemies, but I have rules. I don't hurt innocents, I don't touch children, I don't run drugs that destroy communities, and I don't let monsters walk free when I have the power to stop them. A criminal with a code, she said. Every man needs a code. Otherwise, what separates us from animals? Most animals don't have opposable thumbs. She laughed. It surprised her how often he made her laugh, this man of shadows and violence and power. It surprised her how safe she felt in his presence, how the walls she had built so carefully seemed to crumble whenever he looked at her with those dark eyes that held more pain than he would ever admit. She was falling in love with him. She knew it was foolish. She knew it was dangerous. She knew that loving Park Jae-won was like loving a hurricane, beautiful and terrifying, and guaranteed to leave destruction in its wake. But her heart had never listened to her head. Stay, he said one night as she rose to return to her suite. What? Stay, here, with me. Jaewon, I know. He took her hands and his fingers were trembling. This man who never trembled, who faced death without blinking, was trembling because of her. I know who I am. I know what I've done. I know I don't deserve someone like you, someone clean and brave and unbroken. But I'm asking anyway. Stay with me. Be with me. Let me spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of you. The rest of your life? however long that is. She looked at him, really looked at him, and saw not the mafia boss, not the killer, not the shadow dragon of Seoul's underworld. She saw a lonely man who had lost everything and rebuilt himself from ashes. She saw someone who had never asked anyone for anything, who had survived by never needing, never wanting, never hoping. He was hoping now. For her. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay? I'll stay." He kissed her then, and the world fell away, and Adeyeze knew that she had just tied her fate to the most dangerous man in Korea. She also knew that she had never felt more alive. Min-jun struck 3 months later. The attack came at midnight during a dinner at one of Jaewon's legitimate restaurants. 100 Silver Serpent soldiers poured through every entrance simultaneously, their weapons blazing, their war cries echoing off marble walls. Jaewon had been prepared. What should have been a slaughter became a trap. Hidden doors opened, releasing 200 Black Dragon fighters. What should have been an ambush became a bloodbath in the other direction. Min-jun's soldiers fell like wheat before a scythe. But the leader himself slipped through the chaos, his knife finding its way toward Adeyese's throat before anyone could stop him. "Move and she dies," he snarled, pressing the blade against her skin. "Drop your weapons, all of you." Jaewon stood frozen, his gun aimed at Min-jun's head, his eyes burning with a fury that could melt steel. "Let her go. This is between us." "It stopped being between us when you took my brother from me." Min-jun's hand tightened on the knife. "Now I take what matters most to you." "She has nothing to do with our war." "She has everything to do with our war." Spittle flew from Min-jun's lips. "You think I don't know? You think I haven't watched? The great Park Jae-won, the man of stone, the dragon who feels nothing, and then this African witch comes along and suddenly you're soft, suddenly you're weak, suddenly you have something to lose. If you hurt her, you'll what? Kill me? You'll kill me anyway, but at least this way I get to watch you suffer first." Adeyese moved. It happened so fast that no one saw it coming. Not Min-jun, not Jaewon, not the 100 soldiers watching with held breaths. One moment the knife was at her throat, the next her elbow was in Min-jun's solar plexus, her heels stomping his instep, her body twisting away as she grabbed his wrist and bent it backward until the knife clattered to the floor. "Jaewon," she said calmly, "I believe this belongs to you." Jaewon crossed the distance in 3 strides, his fist connecting with Min-jun's face with a crack that echoed through the sudden silence. "You really shouldn't have threatened her," he said, as Min-jun crumpled. "She's not just some woman. She's the woman who saved my life in that alley. She's the woman who stood in front of 3 gunmen without flinching. She's the woman I'm going to marry." He looked at Adeyese then, and something passed between them, an unspoken question, an unspoken answer. "If she'll have me," he added. "Ask me properly later, when there isn't blood on your shirt." He almost smiled. Then he turned back to Min-jun, who was struggling to rise, blood streaming from his broken nose. "This war ends tonight. Your clan is broken. Your soldiers are dead. You have nothing left." "I have allies. I have friends in the government. You have nothing." Jaewon grabbed him by the throat and lifted him off his feet. "Your government friends abandoned you the moment they realized you were losing. Your allies switched sides an hour ago. The Silver Serpent clan is finished, and so are you." He dropped Min-jun like garbage. "Take him to the warehouse," he ordered his men. "Make sure he understands the cost of threatening what's mine." As they dragged the defeated clan leader away, Jaewon turned to Adeyese, his fury melting into something softer, something almost tender. "Are you hurt?" "I'm fine. I've dealt with worse than him." "You're extraordinary." "I'm a Lagos girl. We don't break easy." He pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly, breathing her in like she was oxygen and he had been drowning for years. "Marry me," he whispered against her hair. "I told you to ask properly." "I'm asking. You're covered in blood." I'll always be covered in blood. This is who I am, but I'll spend every day making sure none of it ever touches you again. Adaese pulled back to look at him. This man who killed without hesitation, who built empires on fear, who just ended a 7-year war in a single night. This man was asking her to spend forever with him? Yes, she said. The wedding was held 2 months later on a private island Jaewon owned off the coast of Jeju. Only 50 guests attended. Trusted allies, loyal soldiers, a handful of Adaesa's friends from her old restaurant life. The ceremony blended Korean and Nigerian traditions, a fusion as unlikely and beautiful as the couple themselves. Adaesa wore white silk embroidered with dragons. Her braids were woven with gold thread. Her grandmother's coral beads circled her neck, the only thing she had left from a life that felt like a distant dream. Jaewon wore black, because he always wore black, because color felt like weakness and he had spent too many years being strong. But his eyes softened when he saw her walk toward him. And when he slipped the ring onto her finger, his hands were steady as stone. "My dragon," she whispered, a private joke between them. "My queen," he replied. She became Ada Park that day, the name feeling strange on her tongue but right in her heart. And for a moment, just a moment, they were not a mafia boss and his bride. They were just two people who had found each other in the darkness. The woman watching from behind the silk curtains felt her heart shatter into 1,000 pieces. Yoon Soo-jin had loved Park Jae-won since she was 20 years old. She had been a celebrity dancer at one of his clubs, young and ambitious and willing to do anything to climb the ranks. She had caught his attention once, just once, a single night that meant nothing to him but everything to her. She had waited for him to notice her again, waited for him to realize that she was perfect for him, that she understood his world, that she would never flinch at his violence because she craved it herself. But he never looked at her twice. And then that African woman came along. Yoon Soo-jin had watched from the shadows as Jaewon changed, as the ice around his heart melted, as he smiled, actually smiled at someone else's jokes, at someone else's presence, at someone else's body in his bed. It should have been her. It was her. In another life, in a fair world, it was her. The tears streaming down her face burned like acid as she watched them exchange vows, as she watched him look at the foreign woman with an adoration he had never shown anyone. She slipped away from the wedding before anyone noticed her presence. 3 days later, she sat in the waiting room of Seoul's most exclusive private hospital. The walls were pristine white. Classical music played softly through hidden speakers. Other patients sat scattered around the room, wealthy women with designer bags and discreet bandages, men in expensive suits pretending to read magazines while waiting for consultations they would never admit to. "Miss Yoon?" A nurse in a crisp uniform appeared at the doorway. "Dr. Kang will see you now." Yoon Soo-jin rose, smoothing her dress, and followed the nurse down a long corridor lined with before and after photographs. Faces transformed, bodies reshaped, identities erased and rebuilt. Dr. Kang's office was all glass and chrome, modern and cold. He sat behind a massive desk, his silver hair perfectly styled, his reputation as South Korea's most skilled cosmetic surgeon evident in the confidence of his posture. "Miss Yoon," he gestured to the chair across from him, "please sit. Tell me what brings you here today." Yoon Soo-jin reached into her purse and pulled out a photograph. She slid it across the desk. Dr. Kang picked it up, studied it for a long moment, then looked at her with carefully neutral eyes. "This is quite extensive," he said slowly. "You understand what you're asking?" "I understand perfectly." The procedures would take months, multiple surgeries, significant recovery time, and the cost. Money isn't an issue. Dr. Kang set down the photograph and steepled his fingers. "May I ask why? This level of transformation, it's not about enhancement, right?" Yoon Soo-jin's smile didn't reach her eyes. Let's just say I'm ready for a new beginning, a complete reinvention. Isn't that what people come to you for? The doctor was quiet for a moment. He had seen many things in his 30 years of practice: vanity, desperation, obsession masked as self-improvement. He recognized the darkness behind this woman's request, but he also recognized the weight of her bank account. We'll need to schedule a comprehensive consultation, full body analysis, detailed planning. If we're going to do it, we're going to do it right. How long until we can begin? 2 weeks for the initial assessments, then we can discuss a timeline. Sujin stood, extending her hand. Schedule everything, whatever it takes, however long it takes. I want to be perfect. Dr. Kang shook her hand, noting how cold her fingers were. I'll have my assistant contact you with the appointments. Thank you, doctor. She walked out of the office, past the waiting room, past the other patients with their small vanities and minor adjustments. They had no idea what transformation really meant. They had no idea what she was willing to become. 1 year of peace. 365 days of something Jaiwan had never known. Happiness without shadows. Love without fear. A life that felt almost normal despite everything he was. He began to change. It happened gradually, the way mountains erode, imperceptibly at first, then suddenly obvious. The sharp edges of Park Jae-won softened. The ice in his eyes thawed. The man who had built his empire on blood and fear started building something else entirely. A home. He woke every morning to the sight of Adiaze's braids spread across the pillow beside him. He learned to cook Nigerian dishes because the joy on her face when he succeeded was worth every failed attempt. He memorized the way she laughed, head thrown back, whole body shaking, absolutely unselfconscious, and made it his mission to hear that sound as often as possible. You're different, Daijang observed one afternoon, watching his boss arrange flowers, for the dinner table. Different how? Human. Jaiwan paused, a white rose in his hand. Is that a criticism? It's an observation. Daijung's weathered face cracked into something almost like a smile. A good one. I never thought I'd see the day. Neither did I. He still ran his empire, the legitimate businesses, the underground networks, the carefully balanced power structures that kept Seoul's criminal underworld in check. But now he delegated more, trusted more, stepped back from the daily violence that had defined his existence for 3 decades. Because now he had something to come home to, someone to come home to. Teach me a word in Igbo, he said one evening as they sat on their balcony watching the sunset paint the city in shades of gold and crimson. Adiaze looked at him with curious eyes. Any word? The most important one you know. She thought for a moment, her fingers intertwined with his, her head resting against his shoulder. Ifunanya, she said softly. Ifunanya, he repeated carefully, the syllables foreign on his Korean tongue. Close enough, she laughed. It means love, but not just any love, the deep kind, the kind that lives in your bones, the kind you feel even when the person isn't there. Jaiwan lifted her hand to his lips and kissed her palm. Ifunanya, he whispered. Is that what I feel for you? I don't know. Is it? I feel like I existed in black and white before you, like I was only half alive, and I didn't even know it until you showed me what living really means. He turned to face her, and his eyes held no shadows, no walls, no carefully constructed defenses, just raw, terrifying openness. I would burn this entire city to the ground if it meant keeping you safe. I would walk into hell itself if you asked me to. Is that Ifunanya? Adiaze felt tears prick her eyes. That's exactly what it is. He kissed her then, slowly, thoroughly, like they had all the time in the world. And for once, they did. The attack came without warning. 6 months into their year of peace, a car bomb exploded outside the restaurant where Adaize still worked 3 days a week. She had been walking toward the entrance when it detonated. The blast threw her 15 feet through the air. Glass and metal and fire erupted in every direction. Screams filled the street. Bodies fell. The world became chaos and smoke in the high-pitched ringing that follows catastrophic violence. Jae-won received the call while he was in a meeting with his lieutenants. "Sir," Jae-jung's voice was tight with controlled panic. "There's been an explosion. The Golden Pearl. Your wife." Jae-won was out of his chair before the sentence finished. He ran through corridors, downstairs, into the waiting car, his heart pounding so hard he could feel it in his throat. The drive took 7 minutes. It felt like 7 years. The scene at the restaurant was apocalyptic. Emergency vehicles crowded the street, their lights painting everything in flashing red and blue. Firefighters battled flames. Paramedics rushed between victims. Police officers shouted into radios, their voices competing with the wail of sirens and the screams of the wounded. Jae-won pushed through the chaos like a man possessed. "Where is she?" he demanded, grabbing the first paramedic he found. "My wife! Araise Park! Where is she?" "Sir, you need to— Where?" The paramedic pointed to an ambulance near the corner, its doors open, medical personnel swarming around someone on a stretcher. Jae-won ran and stopped. Araise lay on the stretcher, her face cut and bloodied, her clothes torn and blackened with soot. Her eyes were closed. An oxygen mask covered her nose and mouth. Medical equipment beeped and whirred with terrifying urgency. "Ada," her name came out as a broken whisper. "Ada, no, no, no." "Sir, are you family?" A doctor blocked his path. "We need to transport her immediately." "I'm her husband. I'm coming with her." "Sir, I am coming with her." Something in his voice, the absolute volcanic fury of it, made the doctor step aside. Jae-won climbed into the ambulance and took Araise's hand. It was cold, too cold. He held it between both of his own, trying to transfer his warmth, his strength, his very life force into her broken body. "Stay with me," he whispered, his voice cracking on every word. "You don't get to leave. You don't get to die. We're not done yet. We're not—" His voice broke completely. The great Park Jae-won, the black dragon of Seoul, the man who had killed without remorse and built an empire on the bones of his enemies, sat in the back of an ambulance and wept like a child. "Please," he begged, and he had never begged for anything in his life. "Please don't take her. Take me instead. Take everything I have. Just don't take her." The ambulance screamed through the streets, and Jae-won held his wife's hand, and the man who had conquered the world realized that none of it mattered. None of it had ever mattered. Only her. She survived. 3 surgeries, 4 blood transfusions, 2 weeks in intensive care, but Araise Okafor Park opened her eyes on the 15th day, looked at the haggard man sitting beside her bed and said, "You look terrible." Jae-won laughed, a broken, hysterical sound that turned into sobbing, that turned into him pressing his face against her hospital gown and shaking with relief that felt like dying. "I thought you lost me. I thought— Lagos girls don't break easy." Her voice was weak, but her spirit was iron. "How many times do I have to tell you?" He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her hands, every part of her he could reach. "Never again," he swore. "I will never let anything touch you again." "You can't protect me from the world, Jae-won. Watch me." He tripled her security. He installed surveillance systems in every building she entered. He put a bounty on the heads of whoever planted the bomb, a bounty so massive that informants came crawling out of every shadow in Seoul. They found the bombers within a week. Silver Serpent loyalists, remnants of Minjun's shattered clan, hiding in the shadows, waiting for their moment to strike. Jae-won dealt with them personally. When he came home that night, his hands scrubbed clean but his soul stained with fresh blood, Araise didn't ask what he had done. She simply opened her arms and held him, and they stayed like that until dawn broke over Seoul. "I can't lose you," he whispered in her hair. "I won't survive it. Do you understand? If you die, I die. There is no me without you anymore. Then I'll just have to stay alive, for both of us." 3 more months passed. Adeze recovered fully. The scars on her body faded, though the psychological scars took longer to heal. Jaewon watched her like a hawk, alternating between suffocating protectiveness and desperate tenderness. But the peace held. The remaining Silver Serpent loyalists scattered. Jaewon's network of informants reported no new threats. For the first time in years, the Black Dragon Syndicate had no active enemies, no brewing conflicts, no wars on the horizon. It was too good to last. "There's something you need to know," Daejung said one morning, his face grave as he entered Jaewon's office. Jaewon looked up from the documents he was reviewing, legitimate business contracts, nothing that would stain his hands. "What is it?" "We've received intelligence about the last major Silver Serpent faction. They're hiding in Busan, about 30 men, heavily armed, led by Min Jun's former second-in-command." "Why haven't we dealt with them before?" "They've been ghosts, moving constantly, never staying in one place. But one of our informants just confirmed their location, a warehouse in the industrial district. They're planning something. We don't know what yet, but the chatter suggests it's big." Jaewon's jaw tightened. "How reliable is the intelligence?" "Solid. Multiple sources. This is our chance to end them for good." He thought of Adeze, of the bomb, of her broken body on the stretcher, of the 2 weeks he'd spent watching machines breathe for her. These were the people responsible. "I'm going personally," he said. "Sir, I need to see this finished. I need to look into their eyes when they realize it's over." He stood, his expression hardening into the mask of the Black Dragon. "Prepare a team. We leave tomorrow." That evening, he told Adeze. "Do you have to go yourself?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. "These are the people who almost took you from me. I need to end this personally." She nodded slowly. "How long?" "A few days, maybe a week. I'll have Daejung's best men watching you while I'm gone." "I'll be fine." "I know you will." He pulled her close, breathing in the scent of her, coconut oil and jasmine, the smell of home. "He needs to know you're safe. It's the only way I can focus on what needs to be done. Come back to me. Always." The next morning, he kissed her goodbye at the door. It was the same ritual they'd performed 1,000 times before. A brief touch, a whispered promise, a look that said everything words couldn't. Neither of them knew it would be their last. They grabbed Adeze on her way home from the restaurant. It happened fast. A van, a chloroform rag, hands dragging her into darkness. By the time she woke up, she was in a concrete room with no windows, her wrists bound, her mouth gagged, and a woman standing over her with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Adaze's first thought was that she was looking in a mirror. Her second thought was that she was going to die. The woman crouching before her wore Adaze's face, her exact face, the same bone structure, the same skin tone, the same arch of eyebrows and curve of lips. Even her braids were identical, woven in the same intricate pattern that Adeze had worn for months. "Hello," the woman said, and her voice was an exact replica of Adaze's own, the same blend of Igbo rhythm and Korean precision. "I've waited a long time to meet you properly." Adeze tried to speak through the gag, but only muffled sounds emerged. "Don't bother." The woman stood, circling her like a predator examining prey. "You have so many questions, I'm sure. Let me answer them for you." She crouched down again, her eyes, contacts that matched Adaze's exact shade of brown, glittering with something beyond sanity. "My name is Yoon Soo-jin. You don't know me, but I know everything about you. Where you were born, Lagos, Ikeja specifically, the yellow house on Adenyi Jones Street. Your grandmother, Mama Nkechi, who sold palm oil in the Balogan market until her knees gave out. Your mother, Chiamaka, who worked 3 jobs and died of exhaustion when you were 20. Your father, a ghost who disappeared when you were 7 and never came back." She smiled at Adaze's widened eyes. "I know about the compound raids when you were 17, about the man who tried to take you and the knife you put in his throat, about the 22 hours on the plane with $40 and a dream, about every job you worked, every apartment you rented, every step of your pathetic journey to Seoul." Soo-jin leaned closer, her breath hot against Adaze's face. "But most importantly, I know about him, about Park Jae-won, about the night in the alley when you saved his life like some kind of romantic heroine, about the way he looked at you at the restaurant, about every dinner, every conversation, every moment he spent falling in love with you instead of me. Her voice cracked on the last word, and something wild and broken flashed in her eyes. It should have been me. I loved him first. I loved him best. I was there before you ever set foot in this country, and I would have given him everything. But he couldn't see me. He looked right through me like I was nothing, like I was invisible. She grabbed Adaze's chin, forcing her to meet her gaze. Do you know what it's like to love someone so completely that you would tear yourself apart for them? To remake your entire body, your entire being, just for the chance that they might finally see you? She released Adaze's chin and stood, gesturing at her own face. It took 18 months, 23 surgeries, months of recovery, of learning to walk like you, talk like you, laugh like you. I studied thousands of hours of footage. I memorized every gesture, every expression, every tiny mannerism that makes you, you. She spread her arms wide. And now look at me, look at me. I'm perfect. I'm you. I'm better than you because I actually appreciate what I have. I actually deserve him. Adaze's mind raced behind her terrified eyes. This woman had spent nearly 2 years transforming herself into an exact duplicate. The level of obsession, the depth of psychosis, it was beyond anything she had encountered even in Lagos's darkest corners. You're wondering what happens now, Sujin said, reading her expression. It's simple, really. While your precious husband is away playing hero in Busan, I'm going to step into your life. I'm going to be the wife he comes home to. I'm going to love him the way you never could, with complete devotion, complete surrender, complete worship. She smiled, and it was the most terrifying thing Adaze had ever seen. And you're going to stay here, for a little while at least. I need to make sure the transition is smooth. I need to make sure he doesn't notice the difference. And once I'm certain, once I've secured my place at his side, I'll send word to my associates to dispose of you properly. Adaze screamed through her gag, a raw, primal sound of rage and terror. Scream all you want, no one can hear you. We're in an abandoned factory on the outskirts of the city. The only people who know you're here are the 2 men guarding the door, and they've been well paid to follow my instructions. Sujin walked toward the door, her hips swaying in an exact imitation of Adaze's stride. I should thank you, really. You showed me what he wants, what kind of woman makes the great Park Jae-won fall to his knees. And now I've become that woman, the perfect version, the version who will never leave him, never disappoint him, never fail him. She paused at the door, looking back over her shoulder. Goodbye, Adaze. Thank you for everything you've taught me. I'll take good care of him. The door closed with a sound like a coffin lid, and Adaze was left alone in the darkness, bound and gagged, with nothing but her rage and her terror and the desperate knowledge that her husband was walking into a trap he didn't even know existed. Jae-won returned from Busan victorious. The last Silver Serpent loyalists had been eliminated. The final threat to his empire had been neutralized. For the first time in his life, there were no enemies lurking in the shadows, no rival clans plotting his downfall. He was free. The raid on the warehouse had been brutal but efficient. 30 men, heavily armed, prepared for war, and Jae-won had cut through them like a reaper through wheat. He had looked into the eyes of Min Jun's former second-in-command as the man begged for mercy, and he had pulled the trigger without hesitation. It was over. Finally, completely, irrevocably over. He burst through the penthouse doors, eager to share the news with Arieze, eager to tell her that they could finally stop looking over their shoulders. She was waiting for him in the living room. "You're home," she said, rising to embrace him. Jae-won pulled her into his arms, breathing her in, letting the tension of the past week drain from his muscles. "It's done," he said against her hair. "They're all gone, every last one of them. I knew you would succeed." She pulled back to look at him, and her smile was warm and welcoming, everything he had come home to for the past year. "Are you hungry?" I can make something. Starving. I haven't eaten properly since I left. Go shower, change. I'll have dinner ready when you come out. He kissed her forehead, a familiar gesture, a ritual of homecoming, and headed for the bedroom. Something in the back of his mind flickered, an instinct honed by decades of survival, but he pushed it away. He was tired. He was home. Everything was fine. In the kitchen, Soo-jin let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. He hadn't noticed. He had looked right at her, kissed her, held her, and he hadn't seen anything wrong. She was succeeding. She was winning. Over the next few days, she settled into the rhythm of Adieze's life. She woke when Adieze would wake. She cooked what Adieze would cook. She said the things Adieze would say, made the jokes Adieze would make, kissed Jae-won the way she had studied Adieze kissing him through months of surveillance footage. And he accepted all of it. Sometimes he caught him looking at her strangely, a slight furrow in his brow, a momentary hesitation before he responded to something she said. But these moments passed quickly, dismissed as the lingering stress of his mission to Busan. He wanted to believe she was his wife, so he believed. "I've been thinking," he said one evening as they sat on the balcony watching the sun set over Seoul. She turned to him, her expression carefully calibrated to match Adieze's curious openness. "What about it?" "The war is over. My enemies are gone. The empire is stable. My lieutenants can run everything without me." He took her hand, and his eyes held something she had never seen before. Hope. Pure, undiluted hope. "I want to leave Korea." Soo-jin's blood turned to ice. "Leave?" "Start fresh. Somewhere new. Italy, maybe. You always said you wanted to see the Amalfi Coast." He smiled, and the expression transformed his harsh features into something almost gentle. "We could buy a villa, plant a garden, be normal people for once in our lives." This was wrong. This was all wrong. Soo-jin had planned everything around becoming Adieeze here in Seoul, where she could enjoy the power and status that came with being the wife of the Black Dragon. She would have the penthouse, the empire, the fear and respect that followed Jae-won wherever he went. If they left Korea, she would have none of that, just him. Just a life with the man she had destroyed herself to possess, in a country where no one would know who they were or what they had been. But she couldn't refuse. The real Adieeze would have been overjoyed at this proposal. The real Adieeze had always wanted to escape the world of violence and shadows. "That sounds wonderful," Soo-jin made herself say. The words tasted like ash in her mouth. "Really?" "Of course. A fresh start, a new life. It's everything we've ever wanted." But even as she spoke, her mind was racing. She couldn't leave Korea with Adieeze still alive. The real Adieeze might escape, might find a way to contact Jae-won, might expose everything Soo-jin had worked so hard to achieve. She needed to accelerate her timeline. That night, after Jae-won fell asleep, she slipped out of bed and made a call on a burner phone. "It's me," she whispered. "The situation has changed. He wants to leave the country." A pause on the other end. "When?" "I don't know. Soon. A few weeks, maybe less." "And the woman?" Soo-jin's jaw tightened. "End it. Within 2 days. Make it clean, make it untraceable, and make it final. That will cost extra. I don't care. Just do it." She ended the call and destroyed the phone, flushing the pieces down the toilet. Then she returned to bed, sliding in beside Jae-won, pressing her borrowed body against his warmth. 2 days. In 2 days, Adieeze would be dead, and Soo-jin would have everything she had ever wanted. She closed her eyes and smiled. Jae-won wanted to celebrate their decision to leave Korea. "One last night," he said. "One final farewell to this city, this life. Just us." He arranged everything personally, a private dinner on the penthouse balcony, their favorite foods from the restaurants they loved, a string quartet playing softly in the living room, white roses everywhere because they were her favorite, champagne that cost more than most people's cars. Soo-jin watched him work, her heart swelling with something that felt almost like genuine emotion. He was doing all of this for her, not for Adieeze, for her, the woman he thought was his wife, the woman he was planning to spend forever with. "You didn't have to do all this," she said, as he led her to the balcony table. I want it to. You deserve it. You deserve everything. The Seoul skyline glittered before them, a tapestry of lights against the darkening sky. The evening was warm, the air fragrant with the scent of roses and the distant salt of the Han River. To new beginnings, Jae-won raised his champagne glass. To new beginnings, Soo-jin echoed. They drank, they ate, they talked about Italy, about the villa they would buy, the garden they would plant, the simple life they would build together far from the shadows of Seoul. And for a moment, just a moment, Soo-jin allowed herself to feel something like happiness. She had won. Against all odds, against all obstacles, she had won. The man she loved was holding her hand, planning their future, looking at her like she was the most precious thing in the world. It didn't matter that the face he was looking at wasn't really hers. It didn't matter that the woman he loved was locked in an abandoned factory, waiting to die. All that mattered was this moment, this feeling, this victory. I love you, she said. And for the first time, the words didn't feel like a performance. I love you more than you could ever know. Jae-won smiled, that rare, beautiful smile that she had spent years dreaming about. I love you too, he said, more than life itself. She stood, walking to the balcony railing to look out at the city one last time. Seoul spread before her like a conquered kingdom, all its lightsly shadows laid at her feet. It's beautiful, she said. I'll miss it. We'll come back to visit, Jae-won said, rising to join her. This will always be home. He was halfway across the balcony when the shot rang out. The bullet came from somewhere in the darkness, a rooftop across the street, a window in a neighboring building, impossible to tell. It moved faster than sound, faster than thought, faster than the human eye could track. It caught Soo-jin in the chest. She didn't scream. She didn't cry out. She simply stopped. Her body went rigid for a single, frozen moment. Then her knees buckled, and she collapsed against the railing, her hand pressed against the spreading crimson stain on her white dress. Ada! Jae-won's voice tore from his throat like something dying. He crossed the remaining distance in a heartbeat, catching her before she hit the ground, cradling her in his arms while her blood poured through his fingers. No! No, no, no! Call an ambulance! Call someone! Don't just stand there! His bodyguards scrambled into action, but Jae-won wasn't watching them. He was watching her, watching the woman he thought was his wife, gasping for breath, her eyes wide with shock and pain. Stay with me, he begged, his voice cracking. Do you hear me? You stay with me. You don't get to die. Not like this. Not ever. Soo-jin looked up at him, and for the first time in years, she saw him clearly. Really saw him. The terror in his eyes, the desperation, the love, so much love, pouring out of him like blood from a wound. He loved her. Not her, not Soo-jin, but the woman he thought she was, the woman whose face she wore, whose life she had stolen, whose death she had ordered. And in that moment, with her life draining away on the cold marble floor, she understood the terrible irony of what she had done. She had spent years trying to become Ada so Jae-won would love her. And now he did love her, loved her enough to weep, to beg, to break. And it was killing him, because it wasn't really her he loved. It never had been. I'm sorry, she whispered, blood bubbling on her lips. I'm so sorry. Don't talk. Save your strength. The ambulance is coming. I'm sorry, she said again, and her eyes were glazing, her breath rattling, her stolen body giving up its borrowed life. I just wanted... She never finished the sentence. Her eyes went empty. Her body went limp. And Park Jae-won held the corpse of his false wife and screamed. It was not a human sound. It was something primal, something broken, something that came from the deepest part of him where he had hidden all his capacity for love and loss and despair. It echoed off the penthouse walls, off the city skyline, off the uncaring stars that watched from above. No, 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 no! Come back! Come back to me! You can't leave! You promised you wouldn't leave! He shook her body as if he could shake life back into it. He pressed his lips to hers as if he could breathe his own soul into her empty lungs. He clutched her against his chest and rocked back and forth, keening like an animal caught in a trap. His bodyguards stood frozen, horrified. They had never seen him like this. They had never known he could be like this. The black dragon of soul, the man who had killed without remorse and conquered without mercy, was curled on his balcony floor, soaked in blood that wasn't his own, crying like a child whose world had just ended. Because it had. His world had ended. Everything he had built, everything he had become, everything he had hoped for, it all meant nothing without her. She was the reason he had wanted to change. She was the reason he had dared to dream of something beyond violence and power. And now she was gone. "I'll find them," he whispered against her cold forehead. "Whoever did this, I'll find them. I'll tear this entire city apart. I'll burn the world to ashes. His voice broke into sobs. "I'll make them suffer," he managed. "I'll make them pay." It took him 3 days to track down the sniper. 3 days of no sleep, no food, no human contact except to issue orders. 3 days of following trails of money and fear, of breaking bones and extracting confessions, of moving through Seoul's underworld like the angel of death itself. The shooter was a freelancer, a mercenary with no loyalty except to the highest bidder. He'd been hired anonymously, paid in cryptocurrency, given a target and a timeline. Jae-won found him in a safe house in Incheon. What happened in that room would never be spoken of. The guards who witnessed it would carry the images to their graves, their minds scarred by what they saw the Black Dragon do to the man who had killed his wife. It took 7 hours. When it was over, Jae-won walked out of the building covered in blood that wasn't his own, his hands steady, but his soul completely destroyed. Revenge had not brought him peace. It had not brought her back. It had not filled the hollow void where his heart used to be. He returned to the penthouse and sat in the darkness, staring at nothing, feeling nothing, being nothing. The roses from their last dinner had wilted, the champagne had gone flat, her blood still stained the balcony marble. He had forbidden anyone from cleaning it, from erasing the last physical evidence that she had existed. His phone buzzed. He ignored it. It buzzed again, and again, and again. Finally, mechanically, he answered. "What? Is this Jae-won?" He froze. The voice on the other end was impossible. It was the voice of a dead woman, the voice he had heard gasping its last breath on the balcony floor, the voice that haunted his dreams and his waking nightmares. "Who is this?" he demanded, his own voice barely above a whisper. "Jae-won, it's me. It's Ada. It's really me." "You're dead. I watched you die. I held you in my arms. That wasn't me. Please, you have to listen. That woman, she wasn't me. She had surgery to look like me. She kidnapped me while you were in Busan. I've been locked in a factory for days, and I just escaped. I need help. Please, please believe me." Jae-won's hands began to shake. This couldn't be real. This was some kind of trick, some final cruelty designed to break him completely. But the voice, "Where are you?" he heard himself asking. "I don't know exactly. Industrial district. I see a sign. Yangdong-po. I'm using a phone I took from one of the guards. Please, Jae-won, come find me. Stay where you are. Don't move. I'm coming." He ended the call and ran for the door. He found her on a street corner in Yangdong-po, battered and bloody, her clothes torn, her braids matted with dirt and sweat. She looked up as his car screeched to a stop. And the moment their eyes met, he knew. This was her. This was really her. Not the woman who had died on the balcony. There had been something off about her, something he had noticed but refused to acknowledge, something that had nagged at the edges of his consciousness. This woman, dirty, exhausted, traumatized, had fire in her eyes, real fire. The fire he had fallen in love with, the fire that had saved his life in an alley, the fire that had stood in front of gunmen without flinching. "Ada," he breathed. "Jae-won." He was out of the car before the driver had fully stopped. He ran to her, pulled her into his arms, held her so tightly that neither of them could breathe. "I thought you were dead," he gasped against her hair. "I watched you die. I buried you." "That wasn't me." She was crying now, her whole body shaking with sobs she had held back for days. "Her name was Yoon Soo-jin. She had surgery, months and months of surgery to look exactly like me. She studied everything about me. She kidnapped me while you were in Busan and took my place." The horror of it crashed over Jaewon like a wave. The woman he had held, the woman he had kissed, the woman he had planned his future with. "I should have known," he said, his voice breaking. "There was something wrong. I felt it, but I convinced myself." "You couldn't have known. She was perfect, an exact copy. How could anyone have known?" He pulled back to look at her, really look at her, taking in every cut and bruise, every sign of what she had endured. "What happened? How did you escape?" And she told him. She told him about waking up in the concrete room, about Soo-jin's unhinged monologue, about the days of captivity with her hands bound and her mouth gagged. She told him about working on her bindings with a piece of broken concrete, about waiting for her moment, about the guards who had grown complacent. She told him about the violence, the pipe, the gun, the desperate flight through industrial streets she didn't recognize. She told him about finding a phone on one of the guards and calling the only number she could remember. His. "I never stopped believing I would find you again," she said, her voice raw with emotion. "Even when I thought I was going to die in that room, I never stopped believing." Jaewon held her face in his hands, wiping away her tears with his thumbs. "She's dead," he said softly. "The woman who took your place. Someone shot her on our balcony. I thought—" His voice cracked. "I thought it was you. I thought I had lost you forever." "I'm here. I'm alive. I'm never leaving you again." He kissed her, a desperate, grateful, reverent kiss that tasted of tears and blood and the impossible gift of second chances. And for the first time in days, Park Jae-won felt something other than despair. He felt hope. They left Korea 3 months later. The investigation into Soo-jin's death revealed a twist that even Jae-won hadn't anticipated. The shooter wasn't connected to Soo-jin at all. It was the last surviving Silver Serpent loyalist, a man named Choi Sung-ho, who had escaped the Busan raid by hiding in a shipping container while his brothers were slaughtered around him. He had made his way back to Seoul with nothing but a rifle and a burning need for revenge. But he was smart enough to know he couldn't kill Park Jae-won directly. The Black Dragon was too protected, too powerful, too surrounded by loyal soldiers who would die before letting anyone touch him. One vulnerability, one person whose death would shatter him completely. His wife. Sung-ho had watched the penthouse, tracking her movements, learning her routines, waiting for the perfect opportunity. He had seen how Jae-won looked at her, how he touched her, how his entire demeanor softened whenever she was near. He had seen the way the Black Dragon's bodyguards formed protective circles around her, treating her like the most precious cargo in the world. She was Jae-won's heart walking outside his body, and Sung-ho intended to stop that heart forever. Not to kill the dragon, but to destroy him, to leave him alive and broken, wandering through the ashes of everything he loved, understanding finally what it felt like to lose everyone who mattered. The way Sung-ho had lost everyone, the way the entire Silver Serpent clan had been reduced to ghosts and memories. So when he saw the woman he believed was Ada Park standing on the balcony that night, silhouetted against the city lights in her white dress, champagne glass in hand, he had smiled, and he had taken his shot. He died 3 days later in that Incheon safe house, never knowing he had killed an imposter, never knowing that the real Ada Park was locked in a factory across the city, never knowing that his act of vengeance, his carefully planned strike at Jae-won's most cherished weakness, had actually saved the woman he intended to destroy. The irony was not lost on Jae-won. Sujin had orchestrated Ada's kidnapping, planning to have her killed. Instead, she had died in Ada's place, shot by an enemy who had no idea about the elaborate deception unfolding right in front of him. A man who wanted to destroy Jaewon by taking his greatest love had unknowingly eliminated the very threat to that love. There was a kind of justice in that, a terrible, poetic justice. But Jaewon didn't dwell on it. He had spent too many years swimming in darkness, and now, miraculously, impossibly, he had been given a second chance at the light. He wasn't going to waste it. The villa overlooked the Mediterranean, its white walls gleaming in the Italian sun. The Amalfi Coast stretched below them in shades of blue and green, dotted with colorful fishing boats and ancient stone buildings. Ada Daze stood on their terrace, the warm breeze catching her braids, her face tilted toward the sun. She wore a simple white dress, no jewelry except her wedding ring, no makeup except the natural glow of peace. She had never looked more beautiful. Jaewon came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist, pressing a kiss to her shoulder. "Happy?" he asked. "Completely. No regrets about leaving Seoul, the life we had?" She turned in his arms, looking up at him with eyes that held no shadows. "That life almost killed me, more than once, and it almost destroyed you." She touched his face, tracing the lines that had deepened over the past months. This is what I want. Peace, quiet, a chance to just be." "Be what?" "Be normal, be happy, be yours." He smiled, that rare, genuine smile that once was impossible and now becoming frequent. "You've always been mine," he said, "from the moment you saved my life in that alley." "I know," he kissed him softly, "and you've always been mine." They stood together on their terrace, watching the Mediterranean shimmer in the afternoon light, feeling the weight of their past fall away like chains, finally unlocked. The black dragon of Seoul was dead. The waitress who didn't panic was gone. In their place stood just a man and a woman, scarred but whole, broken but healed, transformed by everything they had survived. They had found each other in darkness, they had lost each other in shadow, and against all odds, against all enemies, against the very forces of death itself, they had found each other again. The story that began with bullets and blood ended with peace and hope and the simple, profound miracle of two people who had refused to let go of each other no matter what the world threw at them. Some loves are tested by distance. Some are tested by time. Theirs had been tested by death itself, and it had won. Sometimes the most powerful love stories aren't the ones that begin perfectly. They're the ones that survive everything meant to destroy them. If this story moved you, don't just watch and walk away. Like this video, comment below and tell me where you're watching from. I read every single one. And subscribe now, because on this channel, every story will take you deeper into worlds where love is tested, secrets are buried, and destiny always has the final word. And trust me, the next story will stay with you long after it ends. Until then, remember, the strongest hearts are the ones that refuse to break.